The awesome thing about this camera is that on the inside, it's essentially the same as Fujifilm's flagship X-T4. It's got the same great sensor, processor. The sensor is even image stabilized so that if you've got the coffee jitters like me, you can still get sharp images in low light at slow shutter speeds, down to a point, of course. But most of the differences you'll find on this camera are on the outside with the interface. It's got a much more basic interface. Most Fujifilm cameras, you'll find a shutter speed dial, ISO, exposure compensation dial on top. This camera is more like a DSLR with the more traditional PASM mode dial, which could be great for beginner photographers or photographers coming from DSLRs. This camera is going to feel a little more familiar to you. It's got a pretty robust, beefy hand grip, which is great for a small camera like this to make holding it a little more comfortable. It's got a articulating touchscreen LCD, which is great for selfies or vlogging. You can take that expensive touchscreen side and flip it in towards the camera so it's protected while you're carrying it around. The other display is the electronic viewfinder right here, which is a digital image, another digital display. However, it's super bright. It's got a very fast refresh rate. You'll never know that you're looking at a digital image versus a live one. It's also got a little pop-up flash on the top. You just pull this little lever back, the flash pops up for some fill light. The battery and memory card on the X-S10 are found on the bottom of the hand grip. So you slide that little door to open it up. Take your battery, the contacts go in first, line up the contacts, slide that battery in until it locks into place. The memory card, same thing. The contacts go in first with the label of the memory card facing the battery. So again, you just slide that in until it clicks and locks into place. To remove the memory card, you push it in and release, and then you can slide that memory card out. Now, the first thing that you want to do when you put a new memory card into this camera, any new card into any new camera, is format that memory card. Formatting the memory card will get that memory card ready to operate with that specific camera, set up the file structure and whatnot. The other thing that it does is it cleans out that card. So every now and then that card can get dirty, if you will. Some stray ones and zeros will start to accumulate and can corrupt that card to the point where you may lose all of your images on that card. So formatting the card every now and then will help protect you from that. So to format the card, you press the menu button on the back of the camera, go into Setup, User Setting, and then Format. Now it should go without saying that when you format the card, it will erase everything on that card. So if you have some images you wanted to save, make sure they're copied and backed up first. Speaking of buttons and dials, let's just go through a quick familiarization. Now, I'm not going to tell you go in detail about what each one of these controls does because we're going to learn more about that as we go through the course. So for now, just follow along, put your fingers on the things, and get familiar with where they are. First is the on-off switch. That's pretty apparent up there on the right side of the camera on the top. The shutter button is in the middle of that. Press it halfway to command autofocus. Press it all the way to take a photo. Right next to that little red button is the record button where you can start recording a movie in any mode. Then there's the Q button to call up the quick menu, the ISO button to change your ISO or your sensitivity, and then the big wheel on top. Behind that, in the very back, is the rear command dial. This does a lot of different things, which again you'll learn about as we go through the course. The wheel next to that with all the letters on it is the mode dial, where you will change the mode that your camera is in, the exposure mode, or go to a movie mode or auto mode or whatnot. Most Fujifilm lenses that you'll be using have an aperture ring where you rotate the ring to change the aperture. You can also do that with the front command dial depending on the mode you're in. If you set that aperture ring to A for auto, then the camera will figure that out for you. Here's a little lever to pop up the built-in flash. Pull that back to pop it up. Push the flash down to turn it off. The dial right next to that is called the function dial. And again, that performs a few different functions depending on the mode that you're in. Now I mentioned the front command dial. That is the wheel up front right below the on-off button. Going to the back of the camera, the lower right, you have the display back button, which is like your exit button. Also does a few other things. The menu OK button, which is like your enter button. Little joystick, which is mostly used for focus and also navigating through the menus. You have your AF on button to activate the autofocus, the AEL button for exposure lock, the playback button to review the photos you have on your memory card, and then the drive delete button. In shooting mode, this button changes the drive mode that you're in, and then in playback mode, this will delete photos. There's one other button to the right of the electronic viewfinder called the function button, which can be programmed to do whatever you want. The X-S10 does come with an external battery charger. However, you can also charge the battery in the camera, which is great if you're traveling and you have one of those portable battery packs. You can plug that into the camera and let your camera charge while it's in the bag. So to do that, you just open up the little door on the side, take your USB-C cable, plug it in, and the little green light that comes on the back will tell you that the camera is charging. It'll turn off when it's complete. When you change lenses on this camera, it's important to remember that you have a mirrorless camera. So whenever you take this lens cap off or change lenses, that sensor is exposed to the air and everything in it, including stray fingers and fingerprints. And when that sensor gets dirty, it'll show on your photos. They are expensive to replace, but thankfully for cleaning, Fujifilm is pretty good about cleaning these sensors for free if the camera is under warranty. It's just something that you don't want to do all the time, or ever, really. So what drives me crazy is when I see photographers go to change out lenses, and they take the old lens off and they place that camera sensor side up while they go digging through their bag for the new lens, and then they get sidetracked, and all the while all this dust and hair and things are falling into that sensor. So you want to have everything ready to go first. So get your new lens that you're going to put on there, take the rear lens cap off, and then place that lens down on a clean surface. Take the front lens cap off of the camera, rotate it to take that off, and we're going to immediately put that new lens on the camera. So we're going to line up the orange dots that are on the camera body and the lens, line those up, and then just give it a little twist until it locks into place. And now that new lens is on there. When you want to replace a lens, so take this lens off, put a new one on, same thing as before, have the new lens ready to go by taking the rear lens cap off, placing that down. To remove the old lens, there's a little button right here underneath the lens. You just push that in and hold it, rotate the lens until it comes off, put that lens down, put your new lens on, line up the orange dots, twist it until it clicks, and now that is on there. The final step, of course, is to take your old lens and cover it up back with the rear lens cap. All right, so that's the basic operation, familiarization, and external setup for this camera. Next, let's get into the menus and see what we can do for our internal setup.